I was in my downtown Chicago office, a corner suite on the 37th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Outside, December's cold wind painted swirls across the glass, but inside it was silent, save for the soft hum of computers and the occasional tap of keys. My quarterly investment review was nearly over. Numbers, projections, plans for the year ahead. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it, expecting a work update or maybe a calendar reminder. Instead, I saw my sister's name, Allison. Just seeing it made my chest tighten a little. We hadn't been close for years, but I still held out hope every holiday that things might shift. Her message read, "Hey Jessica, Aaron and I have decided to have a quiet Christmas with just the kids this year. We really want to avoid any drama. Hope you understand. Merry Christmas." I stared at the message. The words "avoid any drama" it felt heavier than the Lake Michigan wind. I sat motionless for a second, letting the meaning settle in. There was no confusion, no ambiguity, no room for misunderstanding. I wasn't invited. Actually, I was being specifically uninvited. My mind tried to scramble for explanations, for excuses. Was it something I did? Did I say something at Thanksgiving? Was I too quiet, too indifferent? But then I caught myself. No, this wasn't about anything I'd done recently. This was about who I was, or more precisely, who they thought I was. "Everything all right, Jess?" My CFO, Sarah, had noticed my sudden stillness. Her voice was soft, full of that maternal kindness I'd always admired. "Just family stuff," I replied, managing a thin smile as I slipped the phone face down onto the table. She didn't pry, for which I was grateful. We moved on to talk about mortgage defaults and property values, but my attention was gone. I was a ghost in the room, replaying that text, letting its implications echo. When the meeting ended, I didn't immediately leave the conference room. I just sat there, feeling the weight of another year of exclusion pressing down on me like a heavy winter coat. I wondered how many other siblings, right at that very moment, were being told by family to stay away for the sake of a peace. My own story was ordinary in some ways, but unique in others. Growing up in Oak Park, Illinois, a place that prided itself on tree-lined streets, historic homes, and community parades, I'd always been the odd one. Allison was the golden child. She'd been the homecoming queen, the president of her sorority, the girl who had a wedding registry at Williams-Sonoma. She married Aaron, a high school basketball star turned real estate attorney, and moved into a 4-bedroom house with a porch swing and a 2-car garage. They had 2 perfect kids, a golden retriever, a backyard pool, and matching monogrammed towels. Me. I went to Northwestern on scholarship, majored in finance, got my MBA at NYU, and worked my way up through the world of private lending. I'd never married. Never had kids. I lived alone in a downtown penthouse, my so-called a tiny apartment, and drove an old Prius instead of a luxury SUV. According to my family, I was a difficult, aloof, too focused on work. But I also knew they believed I'd never really made it, that my success was a little embarrassing, something you didn't mention to the neighbors. Allison especially was a master of subtle digs. It must be so freeing not to have any real responsibilities, as she'd say over Thanksgiving pie, flashing the perfect smile while her husband refilled her wine glass. My brother-in-law, Aaron, would always nod in agreement, as if he understood the burdens of real adulthood in a way I couldn't. A few weeks before, at my nephew Caleb's birthday, I'd missed the family dinner because I was in San Francisco, closing the biggest deal of my career. Alison told my mother, work is always more important to Jess. Maybe someday she'll learn what family really means. My mother tried to defend me, but I knew how the story went. At every family gathering, there were always little jokes about my old car, about how a weirdy it was I still lived in the city, about my fancy job nobody understands. But that text, this Christmas, that message made it official. For them, I wasn't just an outsider. I was the potential source of drama, someone best kept away. What they didn't know, and would never guess, was that I wasn't just in finance. I owned the mortgage on their house. 2 years ago, when Alison and Aaron's conventional loan fell through at the last second, she'd called me, frantic. Jess, I know this is a huge ask, but do you have any connections in private lending? We're going to lose the house if we don't close by Friday. Of course, I did. I had just started my own lending firm, Windy City Capital. I structured the loan through a third-party bank to keep it anonymous, wanting to help without stepping directly into their business. I even gave them a slightly better rate than the market offered. For 2 years, they'd been sending monthly payments, never knowing their unreliable sister was the person keeping them in their dream home. That irony didn't feel triumphant. It just felt lonely. Now, sitting alone in my glass office, looking out at the city lights beginning to flicker on, I realized how much I'd wanted to belong, just once, to the warm chaos of their holidays. How much I'd wanted them to see me. To really see me. But it was too late for all that. I opened my laptop and quietly pulled up their mortgage account, my fingers trembling only a little. There, in black and white, was the house they loved, the address I'd visited on birthdays, on 4th of July barbecues. Their peaceful holiday was bought and paid for by the person they'd just asked not to show up. The cold truth was, I'd been working for their happiness while they'd spent years reminding me of my absence. I closed the laptop, stood up, and looked out over the frozen city. Something had shifted. Something final. They didn't want drama. I was done providing it. But I wasn't going to keep making their lives easier while they pretended I didn't exist. Not anymore. The next day, the snow was falling softly outside my apartment windows. Chicago in December can be harsh, but that morning I felt insulated, almost numb. My phone buzzed with group texts about office holiday parties and last-minute client meetings, but I muted them all and focused on the task in front of me. Most people didn't know what it meant to quietly control the fate of a home. There's a strange power in having the keys to someone else's castle, especially when those someone else's are family. I pulled up the Windy City Capital dashboard, searching for the address, 423 Maple Avenue, Evanston. Their forever home, abort during the pandemic frenzy, was now my responsibility on paper, though emotionally it felt like an anchor. I clicked through their payment history. Alison and Aaron were never more than 2 weeks late, but never early, either. Their payments were always precise, right down to the cent, as if they were paying a utility bill rather than the roof over their kids' heads. They'd stretched to buy the place, 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, a patch of lawn with an inflatable Santa still sprawled, half deflated, from last year. When they bought the house, Alison's voice on the phone had been hopeful, trembling. It's perfect, Jess. It's got space for the kids, an actual yard, and the schools are amazing. We just need a little help, that's all. I promise we'll pay it back. I'd structured the mortgage through a partner bank, made it all official. They never saw my name on the documents, only that the loan came through when others had turned them away. My lawyer, Madeline, had raised an eyebrow. Are you sure you want to do this? Family loans get messy. It's not a family loan, EI said. It's business. They'll never know. For 2 years, I kept my word. Birthdays, holidays, the occasional cookout. Never a hint that the woman they excluded was also the one keeping the Christmas lights on. I watched from the sidelines, content to let them believe in their own narrative. Alison, the model wife and mother. Aaron, the reliable provider. Jessica, the single, work-obsessed sister who never really grew up. That unspoken arrangement was fine, until now. I sipped my coffee, reviewing their account. The numbers told a story my sister never would. Total debt, $595,000. Monthly payment, $3,100. Current value, about $570,000. A few late fees here and there. A recent cash-out refinance that didn't make sense. They'd pulled $25,000 for a home improvements, but as far as I could see, the siding still needed work, and the kitchen looked the same as ever. I let myself feel a pang of guilt. Was I really going to call their loan due? I could. The documents allowed for it, 30 days' notice, and if they couldn't pay the full amount, foreclosure proceedings would start. Cold, yes, but not illegal. Not personal, I told myself. But of course it was personal. Everything with family is. I texted Madeline, asking her to prepare the acceleration paperwork, just in case. You sure? Just prepping. No decisions yet. That afternoon, I walked the few blocks to Lake Michigan, letting the biting wind clear my head. I remembered Alison teaching me how to ice skate on the lagoon behind our old house, both of us bundled in hand-me-down coats, falling and laughing, always together. That was a lifetime ago, before grown-up resentments and carefully crafted text messages. Before success meant exclusion and love felt like something to be rationed. Back home, I pulled up Alison's Instagram. Perfect family photos. Aaron tossing their daughter in the air, a Thanksgiving table set with china and gold napkin rings, Alison's proud post about their home sweet home. There were no pictures of me, not for years. Scrolling through, I noticed the subtext, #blessed #family first #holiday magic. It stung more than I'd admit. But what struck me most was how much effort went into maintaining the image. Underneath, the stress was showing. I recognized the look in Aaron's eyes at Thanksgiving, a flicker of worry, maybe even fear. It's the look of someone holding everything together with duct tape and hope. The late mortgage payments made sense now. That night, I called my property manager, Marcus, who handled all my firm's residential properties. Can you drive by 423 Maple Avenue? He knew not to ask questions. You want the usual report? Yes. And let me know if anything seems off. As I hung up, I realized I was holding my breath. The house was more than numbers on a spreadsheet. It was where my niece painted stars on her bedroom ceiling, where my nephew built Lego towers and left them for Santa to find. I didn't want to hurt them. But I also couldn't keep being invisible, supporting a family that only wanted me as long as I was silent and useful. Later that evening, Marcus called back. Place looks fine from the street, but there's some deferred maintenance. Paint's peeling, backyard's a mess. Saw a couple of packages piled up, maybe out of town. And Jess, your sister's car wasn't there. Thanks, Marcus. That's all I need for now. I stared at my phone long after the call ended. What was I really trying to do? Prove a point? Or finally stand up for myself? The line between justice and revenge, I realized, was thinner than ice on that old lagoon. By morning, the city was blanketed in soft white snow, fresh, untouched, the kind that makes even Chicago seem gentle. I tried to focus on my work, but the heaviness in my chest wouldn't let up. I felt like a bystander in my own life, orbiting around a family that never really saw me for who I was. I remembered Thanksgiving, just a few weeks earlier, sitting at Allison's enormous dining table, surrounded by monogrammed napkins and scented candles, watching her glide from guest to guest with practiced grace. The conversation had drifted, as it often did, to a grown-up-y responsibilities. "It must be so relaxing not to have a mortgage, Jess," Allison said, with a bright, brittle smile. "Just your little apartment and your little job." Aaron joined in, raising his wine glass, and "Not everyone's cut out for family life, hon. Some people need to keep things simple." My mother, ever the peacemaker, had tried to change the subject. But the damage was done. Their words landed softly, disguised as jokes, but the sting lingered. After that dinner, I'd driven home through icy streets, replaying every comment. They had no idea about my real life, the late nights, the risk, the responsibility. My little job had turned into Windy City Capital, managing over $700 million in loans. My tiny apartment was a penthouse I'd paid for in cash, with city views most people only dreamt about. But I never explained. Not to them, not to anyone. Wealth, I'd learned, whispers. The people who shout about money are usually the ones about to lose it. That afternoon, Marcus emailed his report about my sister's house. There were photos attached, peeling paint, gutter sagging, weeds creeping across the lawn, the kind of slow decline that can sneak up on a busy family. There was a shot of the backyard, piles of toys and broken pool equipment under a thin crust of snow. There was something sad about it all, a weariness in the way the house seemed to slump against the cold. I also saw a new post from Allison on Facebook, a photo from their recent trip to Disneyland. Matching t-shirts, mouse ears, perfect smiles. The comments poured in, "A beautiful family. You're living the dream." But I noticed a detail nobody else would. Her eyes, tired and anxious, as if she was trying to convince herself as much as everyone else. I checked their mortgage account again, scrolling through the payment history. Every month, they were late, sometimes by 5 days, sometimes 15. The late fees were stacking up. I called Jennifer at Northside Bank, my servicing partner. "Can you send me the last 12 months of payment records on 423 Maple?" She was quick. "They've paid every month, but always late. About $3,800 in late fees over the year. Want me to flag anything else? Just let me know if they ask about hardship deferral options." "Will do." Allison and Aaron were living right up to the edge, maxing out credit cards, borrowing against the house, playing a dangerous game. Their Facebook vacations and Ablesta posts hid a storm of stress. It made me angry, but also sad. Why pretend? Why couldn't they ever just be honest, even with me? That night, as the city glowed blue and gold under the streetlights, I started to compose an email to my mother. I wanted to explain everything. I wanted her to know the truth, to finally see me as something other than the black sheep. But I stopped myself. What would that solve? My mother loved me, but she hated conflict. She'd always said, "Don't rock the boat, Jess. Family is all you've got." But what if the boat was already sinking, and nobody wanted to admit it? Instead, I pulled out a blank notepad and started listing what I knew. The facts. Alison and Aaron's mortgage was technically current but always late. They'd refinanced twice, draining equity for improvements that didn't exist. Their total debt now exceeded the home's value. Their social media life was curated to perfection, but the finances didn't lie. The feelings. I was tired of being invisible. I was tired of being useful only when it helped them. I was tired of holidays spent alone while being called too busy for family. I was tired of pretending I didn't care. A cold, sharp resolve was forming in me. I wasn't going to ruin their lives. I didn't want revenge. But I did want respect. I wanted my place at the table back. I wanted Alison and Aaron to finally see me not as a problem to be managed, but as a person whose choices mattered. The next day, my mother called, her voice soft with concern. Alison mentioned you're going to Aspen for Christmas. That sounds so glamorous, honey. I smiled, feeling the weight of my secret. It's just a break, Mom. I need some fresh air. She hesitated. Is everything all right between you and your sister? I considered lying, but the truth slipped out, and not really, Mom. But I'm done trying to fix it on my own. That night, as I packed my suitcase for Aspen, I felt lighter than I had in years. I was finally ready to stop living in the shadows of someone else's story. If there was going to be a drama in this family, I was no longer afraid of being at the center of it. I woke up on Christmas Eve to sunlight pouring through the glass, melting patches of snow on the balcony. Chicago was quiet, almost soft, the city's usual noise muted by the holiday. My flight to Aspen was in a few hours. As I sipped my coffee, I looked around my apartment, sleek lines, tasteful art, and a skyline view that most people would envy. But at that moment, it felt like just another place where I was alone. I checked my phone. No new messages from Alison. Not even a safe travels or half-hearted emoji. If I needed any more confirmation that I was being erased, that was it. I went for a run along the lake, the air sharp in my lungs, the path empty except for the occasional determined jogger. The wind stung my cheeks, but I welcomed the ache. Physical pain was easy. Emotional pain, not so much. Back home, I reviewed the legal documents Madeline had prepared. Are you really going through with this? As she'd asked the night before, her voice gentle but firm. I am, I said. They need to see the truth. Not just about me, but about themselves. The papers were all in order. The acceleration clause gave me the right to demand full repayment of the mortgage within 30 days if payments were late or terms violated. I'd never enforced it before, never wanted to. But I also never expected to be shut out of my own family. I called Jennifer at the bank. This is Jessica Taylor with Windy City Capital. I'm exercising the acceleration clause on loan 2197. There was a pause on the other end. Jessica, are you sure? That's the Maple Avenue property. The payments are late, but... I'm sure. Please send the demand letter and prep foreclosure documents if the balance isn't paid within 30 days. She didn't argue. She knew I was within my rights. I hung up, feeling hollow and strong at the same time. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about boundaries. About finally saying, enough. I packed my suitcase, set an out-of-office reply, and texted my mother that I'd landed safely in Aspen before I even left for the airport. One less lie to worry about later. Aspen was beautiful. Snow drifted past the windows of my hotel, thick and gentle, erasing all noise. I checked in, ordered room service, and sat by the fireplace, listening to nothing but the hiss of logs and the distant laughter of other families celebrating together. For once, I didn't feel like I was missing out. The loneliness was real, but it was honest. I'd rather be alone in the mountains than invisible in my own family's living room. On Christmas morning, I woke up late. I made myself coffee and watched the world outside turn gold as the sun climbed over the peaks. My phone vibrated. One message from my mom. Merry Christmas, Jess. Miss you. Call when you can. I texted back, sending a photo of the snowy mountains, and told her I was happy. It was mostly true. For the next 2 days, I let myself rest. I skied. I read. I ate too much dessert. The ache in my chest didn't vanish, but it faded, replaced by something new, a sense of resolve. On December 28th, my phone rang as I finished breakfast in the hotel lounge. It was my mother, her voice tight with worry. Jess, did you do something with Alison's house? She got a letter from the bank. Something about the mortgage being due in full, 30 days or they'll foreclose. She's panicking. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been moving toward. Mom, I need you to listen to me, I said, steady and calm. Windy City Capital, the company that holds Alison's mortgage, is mine. I own it. I gave her the loan 2 years ago. I've watched them struggle and pretend and leave me out of the family, all while I made sure they had a place to live. My mother was silent. Then, oh, Jess, why didn't you ever say anything? They never asked. And now I'm done pretending. I'm not doing this to hurt them. But they need to learn that you can't treat people like they don't matter, and then expect help in secret. There was a pause, then the sound of her softly crying. I just wish you could all be together. Me too, Mom, I whispered. Me too. When we hung up, I felt shaky, like I'd just stepped onto a wire strung high above the city. My phone immediately started buzzing with calls from Alison, from Aaron, from numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. Alison's first message was frantic. Jess, I just found out you own our mortgage. Please, please don't do this. We'll talk. We'll fix it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Aaron's message was shorter. Jess, this is Aaron. Please call us back. The kids, this is their home. Please. The rest were a blur of apologies, panic, and guilt. I listened to a few, then turned off my phone and went for a walk. The world was silent but for the crunch of snow under my boots. For the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was more than just the background to someone else's story. Maybe this was the beginning of my own. Back in Aspen, I tried to enjoy my last day. The snow outside was dazzling in the morning light, but my mind kept returning to my phone, those unread messages from Alison and Aaron piling up like fresh drifts. I knew I couldn't avoid them forever, but for the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to fix things for everyone else. That afternoon, as I sipped coffee in the hotel lounge, I scrolled through the voicemails. I listened, one by one, to Alison's desperate apologies, to Aaron's halting explanations, to the panic building in their voices. There was anger too, anger that I'd kept this from them, anger at losing control. But beneath it all, I heard fear. Fear of losing the house. Fear of facing the truth. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. Maybe I wanted them to sit with the discomfort, to realize that their choices and their words had consequences. The news spread quickly through the family. By the time I landed in Chicago on January 2nd, my inbox was full. Cousins, aunts, even Aaron's mother reaching out with various mixtures of blame and pleading. I answered none of them. My mother, caught in the middle, texted just one line. I hope you know I love you, no matter what. On January 3rd, my assistant handed me a stack of letters and phone messages when I walked into the office. Among them was an official request for a loan modification from Allison and Aaron, asking to meet directly with the decision maker here at Windy City Capital. It was almost funny. For years, I'd sat at family tables, nodding along while they discussed their important jobs and grown-up responsibilities. Now, they wanted to talk to the one person they'd pushed aside. I called Jennifer at the bank. Set up a meeting for Allison and Aaron Taylor to discuss their mortgage. January 12th, 2 p.m. My office. Should I tell them it's you? No. Just say the decision maker will be there. The days leading up to the meeting were tense. I caught glimpses of my sister's life through Facebook. No new posts, but I noticed she'd untagged herself from certain photos, as if erasing evidence of the life she was afraid of losing. Friends messaged me privately, asking what was really going on. I didn't answer. I focused on work. I went to yoga. I had dinner alone at my favorite Italian place and felt, for once, completely at ease. On the morning of the meeting, the sky over Chicago was slate gray, threatening snow. I wore my favorite navy suit, the one that made me feel like the version of myself I wanted to be, competent, calm, unshakable. My hair was pulled back, my expression steady. For years, I'd made myself smaller, quieter, trying to fit into someone else's version of family. That ended today. At 2 o'clock sharp, my assistant buzzed, "Hey Jessica, your guests are here." I could see Allison and Aaron in the waiting area, shifting uncomfortably, clutching a manila folder stuffed with paperwork. Their lawyer, a nervous-looking man in his 40s, stood awkwardly by the window. "Send them in, please," I said. When they entered and saw me at the head of the table, their faces went white. For a moment, nobody spoke. Allison found her voice first. "Jess, what are you doing here?" I kept my tone even. "I'm the CEO of Windy City Capital. I own your mortgage." There was a stunned silence. Their lawyer coughed, shuffling his notes. Aaron stared at the floor. Allison's hands shook as she set down her purse. "But why? Why didn't you ever say anything? Would it have made a difference?" I asked quietly. "Would you have treated me differently?" Nobody answered. Their lawyer tried to recover, launching into a well-practiced plea about family, about hardship, about how foreclosure would be devastating for the children. He used words like a mercy and a forgiveness, appealing to any last scrap of sentiment. I listened, arms folded, heart pounding. When he finished, I spoke directly to my sister. "Allison, for years you've treated me like the problem. Like I didn't belong. You wanted me silent, invisible, useful only when it benefited you. And I let you. I thought that's what family did, made sacrifices, forgave slights, kept the peace. But respect goes both ways. Aaron looked up, eyes shining with tears. We were wrong. I was wrong. We thought. You thought I didn't matter. I finished. That I'd always be there, no matter how you treated me. Alison was crying now, softly, trying to wipe her face without smearing her mascara. We were scared. We didn't want people to judge us for needing help from you. I was ashamed that you were doing better than us. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I let the silence stretch. For the first time, I saw them not as adversaries, but as flawed people, scared, uncertain, desperate. I picked up their file and laid out the terms, my voice steady. You have 2 years to refinance this mortgage with another lender. Starting next month, your interest rate drops to 2.5%. No more late payments, no more second chances. If you're late again, the loan is called in full. And you will apologize to Mom for making her think I'd ever want to hurt this family. And one more thing, next month, you'll host a dinner for the entire family, and you will tell them the truth about me. About who I am and what I've done. They agreed instantly, relief and gratitude flooding their faces. But I could see it in their eyes. This was just the beginning of the real reckoning. For me, too. After the meeting, I lingered in my office, staring out at the frozen river winding through Chicago. My heart was racing, but not with regret, more like a mix of adrenaline and something softer, maybe relief. For years, I dreamed of being truly seen by my family, and now that the truth was out, the silence that followed felt almost sacred. That evening, my mother called. Her voice was warm and shaky. Alison told me what happened, as she said quietly. I had no idea, Jess. You never said a word. Why did you do it all in secret? I thought about that for a long moment. I wanted to help, I finally admitted, but I didn't want to be the hero, or the victim, or the scapegoat. I just wanted to be your daughter. Their sister. Someone who mattered, even if I didn't fit their idea of what family looks like. There was a long pause, and then she said, You've always mattered to me. And I'm sorry you had to carry all that alone. We both cried, a little, but it was the kind of crying that washes things clean, not the kind that leaves you feeling smaller. Word spread quickly. Within days, my inbox was full of family members offering apologies, excuses, or, sometimes, unexpected praise. Aunt Carol called to say she had never doubted I'd make something of myself. My cousin Ben sent a text. Honestly, you were always the coolest of us, Jess. We just didn't get it. Even Aaron's mom wrote me a long letter, confessing how she judged me over the years. She ended it with, I hope someday you can forgive us for not seeing you clearly. But I didn't answer anyone right away. I needed space, time to breathe and just be myself for a while, away from everyone else's expectations. Alison and Aaron kept their promises. They paid on time, every month. They sent regular updates, humbler and more honest than ever before. In February, they hosted that family dinner. The house looked different this time, less perfect, a little messier, with kids' toys scattered across the living room and the kitchen table crowded with homemade food. Before dinner, Alison stood up and asked for everyone's attention. I need to tell you all something, as she began, voice trembling. I haven't always been fair to Jess. I made assumptions about her, about her choices, and I judged her for things I didn't understand. The truth is, she's the reason we're still in this house. She's helped us more than anyone knows, and I'm sorry for ever making her feel like she wasn't welcome. The room was silent, everyone watching as Alison wiped her eyes and squeezed my hand. Aaron added, "I judged you too, Jess. I let my own pride get in the way of being a good brother-in-law. I'm grateful for what you did, even when we didn't deserve it." My mother raised her glass, her voice strong for the first time in a long time. "To Jessica, for teaching us all what real family means." People laughed, clinked glasses, and for the first time in years, I felt at home. After dinner, Alison pulled me aside in the kitchen. "I'm really sorry," as she whispered. "I know it'll take time, but I want to fix things between us. Not because I owe you, but because I miss my sister." We hugged, and for the first time in a long while, I believed her. The next day, I got a message from Alison. No hashtags, no filters, just her, raw and honest. "We're working on our finances. We're learning to live within our means. Thank you for giving us the chance to get it right, Jess. You didn't just save our house. You saved us from ourselves." It made me smile, and, yes, cry at my desk. Maybe, I thought, that was all I'd ever wanted. Not approval or gratitude, but connection. Real, messy, ordinary love. As spring approached, things shifted in small, almost invisible ways. Family group chats became less about showing off and more about checking in. My cousins started asking me for advice about business and life. Even Aaron opened up, sending me articles about real estate, eager to learn and to show he was making an effort. I kept my boundaries. I still spent holidays in Aspen or with friends when I needed space, but I never again felt like an outsider looking in. I belonged, to myself, and to the people who finally learned to see me. And so did Alison. Over the months, she changed too. She became softer, less obsessed with appearances, more interested in the substance of things. Sometimes she'd call just to talk about nothing, the weather, her kids, a new recipe she tried. No pretense, no performance, just sisters, figuring it out together, one ordinary day at a time. March brought a late snowstorm to Chicago, but the mood in my family was warmer than it had been in years. Alison and I texted almost every day, sometimes about mortgages or home repairs, sometimes about her daughter's science project or a new book she thought I'd love. For the first time in a long time, our conversations didn't feel forced. There were no hidden agendas, no attempts to prove anything. Just two sisters reconnecting, tentatively, with the fragile trust that only comes after true apologies. Our mother, sensing the thaw, suggested a new tradition, monthly family dinners. Nothing fancy, as she said, just everyone together, once a month. Potluck style. Surprisingly, Alison volunteered to host the first one. She didn't care that the house still needed paint or that the kitchen chairs didn't match. She wanted people, not perfection. That first dinner was awkward at first. My aunt brought her famous potato salad, which nobody really liked but everyone took a spoonful of out of habit. Aaron manned the grill, and I brought a chocolate cake from the little bakery on my block, one my mother had always raved about, even if she still pretended to love her own dry pound cake more. Alison didn't try to impress anyone. She served store-bought bread, let her kids make a mess, and laughed when the dog got into the appetizers. "We're all a work in progress," as she said, as everyone squeezed around the table. I caught my mother's eye, and she smiled, a tired, real smile. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe in my family's company. Over the next few months, the dinners rotated. My cousin Ben hosted in his cramped apartment above a pizza place, and nobody complained about the noise. Aunt Carol brought too much food, as always. By June, the rhythm was set. There were jokes about who would burn the burgers next, and debates over which cousin was actually the worst cook. What mattered most was that we all showed up, messy, real, unfiltered. One Sunday afternoon, as the city shimmered in the first real heat of summer, Alison and I found ourselves sitting on her back porch, sipping iced tea. The kids played in the yard, Aaron tinkered with the mower, and for a moment, everything felt simple. You know, Alison said quietly, I always thought success meant having the nicest house or being able to throw the perfect party. But none of that helped us when we were really struggling. We needed you, and we almost lost you because I was too proud to admit it. I looked at her, seeing not the sister who had excluded me, but the one who had shared childhood secrets, who knew every embarrassing story about my high school years. I'm still here, I said softly. I always was. I just needed to know it mattered. She reached for my hand and squeezed it, and for the first time in years, I knew she meant it. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, my mother called. I'm proud of you, Jess. Not for your job or your apartment or your bank account. For your heart. For teaching us all how to come back together. It was a simple call, but it echoed in my mind as I lay in bed, watching city lights twinkle beyond the window. Maybe, I thought, this was what I'd been missing, not applause, but belonging. Not being the successfully one or the failure, but just being Jessica, daughter, sister, friend. The months rolled on. Alison and Aaron stayed true to their word. They never missed another payment, and by winter, they had refinanced their mortgage with a new lender. No tricks, no shortcuts, just honest effort and discipline. Alison called me the day it went through. We did it, Jess, as she said, her voice brimming with relief and pride. It's really ours now. And I promise, I'll never forget what you did for us. I'm glad, I said. But more than that, I'm proud of you. For facing the hard things. For changing. We celebrated, quietly, with takeout pizza and a silly movie night at my place. No one tried to outdo anyone else. We just were, and it was enough. Aaron, too, changed in small but important ways. He asked for my advice on real estate investing, eager to learn, humble enough to admit what he didn't know. He apologized again, once in private, once in front of the whole family. I could tell it wasn't just about the mortgage. It was about seeing me, for the first time, as someone worthy of respect. Our mother's health wavered a little that autumn, and for the first time, nobody hesitated to step in. We took turns at her appointments, divided up chores, and checked in daily. The family group chat became a lifeline, full of memes, reminders, and genuine care. No more one-sided conversations. No more silence. Looking back, I realized how much had changed since that December text. The exclusion, the humiliation, the quiet work I'd done in the background, it had all led to this, a family that chose each other, not because it looked good, but because it was right. The wounds didn't disappear overnight, and not every dinner ended in laughter. There were still arguments and awkward silences, still old habits that died hard. But now, there was honesty, and with honesty came the possibility of real healing. A year passed, marked by seasons instead of drama. My life settled into a new, gentle rhythm. Each month, we gathered, sometimes at Alison's, sometimes at my place, or in Ben's crowded kitchen with everyone squeezed together, plates on laps, laughter echoing off the walls. I found myself looking forward to these dinners, not as a test of belonging, but as a homecoming I never expected to find again. Work was steady. Windy City capital grew, but I stopped measuring my worth by its numbers. Clients came and went, deals rose and fell, but I was more present in my own life than ever before. I stopped checking my phone at dinner. I started bringing homemade desserts instead of bakery cakes, sometimes burning them, and nobody cared. That was the miracle. Nobody cared. The family who once judged every flaw now saw the effort, not the imperfection. One Saturday, I hosted everyone for brunch. My apartment, always spotless, looked a little lived in now. Kids' shoes by the door. Art supplies on the coffee table. My niece, Anna, curled up beside me on the sofa, showing me her latest drawing. "I made you taller this time, Aunt Jess," as she said, proud and grinning. I laughed. "That's a big improvement. Maybe next time, make me a superhero?" She beamed. "You already are." It was a small thing, but I felt it deep inside. That's all I'd ever wanted, to be seen. Not for the money, the degrees, or the silent sacrifices, but for who I was. For how I tried, and how I loved. Alison, too, was changing. She started volunteering at the local food bank, sometimes dragging Aaron and the kids along. She talked about balance, about choosing a enoughy over a more. One night over wine, she confessed, I wish I'd learned this lesson sooner. I was always so afraid of what people would think if they saw the real me, the imperfect mom, the messy house, the woman who needed help. I squeezed her hand. Maybe we all needed to be humbled a little, to figure out who we are without the masks. She nodded. "Thank you, Jess, for loving us, even when we didn't deserve it." By winter, Aaron had started a side business, flipping small homes in less trendy neighborhoods. He called me often for advice, eager to build something steady, honest. He even told his friends at work about what happened, about how pride almost cost him his home and his family. "Jess saved us," he'd say, but more than that, she taught us that appearances don't mean a thing if you don't have each other. Even our mother, always the peacemaker, seemed lighter. She laughed more easily, her worry lines softening. She saw the changes in her daughters and felt her own heart healing. I always thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet, she told me once as we walked along the lake. But sometimes you have to make a little noise for things to get better. Family, I realized, wasn't about never having conflict. It was about learning to grow through it. The old patterns of silence and resentment didn't disappear, but now we faced them head on, talked things out, and, most importantly, chose to keep showing up. The holidays rolled around again. This time, the invitation to Christmas dinner came early and directly. Alison sent me the first message in the group chat. "Jess, you're hosting Christmas Eve this year. We want your cookies and your crazy Christmas playlist. Non-negotiable." It was a simple ask, but it felt like the final proof that everything had changed. There was no more fear of being a guest in my own family's life. On Christmas Eve, my apartment was alive with noise and warmth. Anna and her brother built gingerbread houses on the coffee table. Aaron and Ben debated football, my mother orchestrated a sing-along in the kitchen, and Alison danced with the dog to Mariah Carey. The tree glowed, lights twinkling against the snowy cityscape outside. After dinner, as the room quieted and everyone sat in a happy sprawl, Alison raised a toast. "I want to say something," as she began, her voice steady, but her eyes shining. "Last year, I almost lost my sister because I was too proud to see her for who she is. Jess, you gave us more than a second chance. You gave us a new start. And you showed us that real family isn't about perfection. It's about forgiveness, about growth, about having the courage to be honest." Aaron nodded, lifting his glass, air to Jess. "For loving us, teaching us, and never giving up, even when we gave her every reason to." Everyone echoed the toast. I felt the words settle in my chest, warmer than any fire. For the first time, I truly belonged, not because I'd earned it or bought it, but because we'd all learned how to fight for each other. Later that night, after the dishes were stacked and the last hug exchanged, I stood by the window and looked out at the quiet city. The lights below blurred in the frost, and for a long moment I let myself feel it all: the loneliness that had shaped me, the pain of exclusion, the quiet work done in the dark, and the miracle of being seen at last. Success, I realized, wasn't measured in bank balances or career titles. It was here, in this noisy, imperfect family, in the home we'd built together from honesty, humility, and love. The new year dawned quiet and bright. Snow layered the city rooftops, but inside, warmth lingered. Life felt fuller and lighter than I'd ever imagined possible. Not perfect, never perfect, but real. In the weeks after Christmas, I caught myself humming as I moved through my apartment. The echoes of family laughter still lingered in the corners. I found stray puzzle pieces under the sofa, a forgotten mitten on the coat rack, and a tiny, handwritten thank you note from Anna tucked into my favorite book. "Thank you for being my aunt," it read, with lopsided hearts. I slipped it into my wallet, a quiet reminder of what mattered most. Alison and I grew even closer as winter turned to spring. We began meeting every Saturday morning for coffee, sometimes in a cozy cafe, sometimes just a walk through the thawing city. Our conversations deepened, branching out from family logistics to dreams, disappointments, and memories we'd both been afraid to revisit. One Saturday, as we watched the river ice break up in the sun, Alison turned to me and said, "I used to think needing help made me weak. But I see now it takes real strength to ask for help, and to accept it when it comes. I'm glad you didn't give up on me, Jess." "I'm glad you finally let me in," I said. "It's all I ever wanted." For the first time, we could laugh about the past, about old arguments, missed birthdays, the ways we misunderstood each other. There were tears too, of course, but they were cleansing, not bitter. We both apologized for things we didn't even realize had hurt each other. It was as if the years of silence had given way to a spring thaw, old ice melting in the sun. Aaron, too, found his footing. His side business grew, steady and honest, and he never missed another payment on anything. Sometimes, he'd text me real estate questions or just send a picture of a fixer-upper he was proud of. Once, he invited me to see a house he'd renovated, and when I arrived, he handed me the keys. "Just for a moment," he said. "I want you to see what you made possible." Even Mom seemed more relaxed. Her health stabilized, and she became the self-declared family historian, organizing photo albums, sharing stories we'd never heard before. She even took up painting, and once, during a family dinner, presented me with a small watercolor of my apartment building, city lights aglow. "For you, Jess," as she said, "because you always found your own way to shine." Family dinners became a true ritual, sometimes loud and messy, sometimes quiet and heartfelt, but always real. Birthdays, anniversaries, and a just because of gatherings filled the calendar. Even Ben, the cousin who once stayed on the sidelines, stepped up, hosting trivia nights that ended with more laughter than correct answers. The old wounds didn't disappear, but they scarred over, softer and less raw. We talked things out now, even when it was uncomfortable. There were still disagreements and moments of awkwardness. Old habits don't break overnight, but we didn't run from them anymore. We'd learned how to show up, even when it was hard. On the anniversary of the infamous "I Don't Come to Christmas" a text, Alison surprised me with a tiny cake and a candle. "Happy New Family Day," as she declared, laughing. "Let's never celebrate this again." We all laughed, but I felt a catch in my throat, a blend of gratitude, forgiveness, and a little grief for what it took to get here. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone by the window and thought about the road I'd traveled. There were nights when I wondered if things would ever change, if family would always mean choosing between belonging and being myself. But here, at the end of the journey, I understood the truth. I never really had to choose. The right kind of love, honest, messy, forgiving, makes room for all the pieces of you, even the ones that don't fit perfectly. For so long, I believed that my worth depended on what I could do for others, on what I could provide, or how quietly I could endure. But now, I saw that true belonging comes not from what you give up, but from what you share, and what you are brave enough to ask for in return. I thought of Anna's note, tucked away in my wallet, and of my mother's painting, and of Alison's new honesty, and Aaron's hard-won humility. All of it was proof that families can grow, that people can change, that even the coldest holidays can give way to new beginnings. As midnight approached, I stood on my balcony and let the city's lights stretch out before me, endless and alive. Somewhere, in every building, someone was wishing for connection, for forgiveness, for a chance to be truly seen. Maybe, I thought, the greatest gift we ever give each other is not perfection, but presence. Not sacrifice, but sincerity. Not silence, but the courage to speak up, and the grace to listen. I closed my eyes, breathed in the cold air, and whispered my own quiet promise to the night. Never invisible again. Always home, wherever love finds me. And with that, I stepped back inside, the warmth of family waiting just beyond the door.